Challenge accepted. Some hats are just fashion, others are cinematic legend. Today, we're tipping our brims to the greatest hats in movie history. Yes, you heard that right. I'm doing an entire video on famous Hollywood hats. And trust me, these aren't just accessories. These hats help define characters, cement iconography, and made us all think, I gotta get me a hat. Hey, I'm Mike. I studied film, I work in TV, and I love movies. Man, I wish we still lived in an era where wearing hats was more commonplace. When you look at old movies, everyone wore a fedora, and it just upped the cool factor. They also smoke, though. When I first started writing this, I wanted to make a top 5 video, but honestly, when I scratched the surface, there are just way too many iconic hats to stop at just 5. So today, we're doing a super duper deep dive into famous Hollywood headwear. First, a caveat. I had to limit this list to hats that you would recognize on their own, apart from the characters that wore them. There are just too many amazing characters that wore hats to talk about them all. So we're just talking today about hats that help define their characters, not a character who wore a hat. Make sense? And because we have a lot to get through, I'm just gonna get this first one out of the way. Kind of like when a rock band plays their big hit first. First up, Indiana Jones's fedora from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Arguably the most famous hat in film history, Indy's weathered fedora isn't just a part of his outfit, it's a defining characteristic of who Indy is. Without it, he's just another archaeologist. With it, he's a pulp hero, an action star, a throwback to the 1930s serials, and instantly recognizable in silhouette. Legend has it that Harrison Ford went through over 30 fedoras across the series, but you'd never know it. The hat, like Indy himself, always gets out just in the nick of time. Costume designer Deborah Nadoolman Landis, yes, wife of John Landis and a total legend in her own right, was tasked with making Indy look like a 1930s serial adventure. She was inspired by Humphrey Bogart in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and Charlton Heston in The Greatest Show on Earth, both of whom would have made this list if not for Indiana Jones. Landis contacted hatter Herbert Johnson in London and selected a model called The Poet. Roughed it up and voila, cinematic immortality. You can go to Herbert Johnson's website and purchase your own Poet hat for a little over $500. Of course, it's up to you to provide the adventurous to properly weather it. An original Indiana Jones fedora has been on display at both the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History and the Academy Museum of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Los Angeles. More recently, in 2024, a screen-worn Indy hat from Temple of Doom sold at auction for $630,000. And yeah, you can bet that guy runs around his house imagining he's the real Indiana Jones. I would be. Trust me. Next up, Rose's wide-brim lavender hat from Titanic. It's more than a hat, it's an entrance. Rose's wide-brim lavender showstopper from Titanic says everything without saying a word. Elegance, wealth, drama. Costume designer Deborah Lynn Scott used it to frame Rose like a painting. An upper-class woman entering a doomed voyage and an even more dramatic romance. It's the kind of hat that announces this story is about to kick off. We see the hat before we see Kate Winslet's face. She's exiting her car, and the hat reveals Rose's face to us when she looks up to see Titanic. Also, fun fact, the hat was so big it barely fit through the door of the car. Kate Winslet said it was like wearing an umbrella that judges you. And hats off, pun intended, to Kathy Bates and Maggie Smith for trying to come in second in this contest. I could do a whole video just on the hats of Titanic. We can't do a video about Hollywood hats without talking about the Harry Potter series. No, not that hat. Or that one. No, not that one either. I'm talking about the sorting hat. According to Harry Potter legend, the sorting hat comes from Godric Gryffindor himself, which means it's over 1,000 years old. That's right, that hat has tenure. It sings and roasts students while sorting them into their respective houses within the school. The prop itself was a mix of practical puppetry and later CGI. It was voiced by Leslie Phillips with the energy of a sarcastic British uncle. The whole concept of your personality judged by a piece of clothing feels oddly accurate for a movie that's ultimately about a high school. The actual hat used in production can be seen at the Warner Brothers studio tour in London, The Making of Harry Potter. There they have several versions on display, the puppet version, the animatronic version, and CGI renderings for the completely animated hat. Speaking of pointy magical hats, next up is Mickey Mouse's hat in Fantasia. Originally part of Walt Disney's attempt to make Mickey Mouse more mature, Fantasia was meant to be highbrow, a concept film to elevate animation. At the time, Mickey was dwindling in popularity, and Fantasia was an attempt to bring Mickey Mouse back into the cultural lexicon. And boy, did it. The hat is based on classic Merlin iconography, but stylized to fit Mickey's round shape. The blue cone with silver stars became so iconic, Disney made it the symbol for their sorcerer's hat at Hollywood Studios, a real-life structure that cost millions to build, but unfortunately was removed in 2015. Luckily, I was able to get this picture before it was demolished. That's my daughter. And while we're on a run of pointy magical hats, we have to talk about the Wicked Witch of the West. The Wizard of Oz made the witch's black hat famous, but Wicked canonized it, the backstory of how it came into Elphaba's possession, from Glinda of all people. Yes, I know we just profiled 3 pointy magical hats, but look at them next to one another. I don't even have to show you who they belong to, the hats alone are iconic. The witch's hat, worn by Margaret Hamilton in The Wizard of Oz, sold a few years ago for, get this, $2.93 million. Although, I hope whomever bought that is not wearing it around their house casting spells.
Hats. Okay, hats. If I ever see a hat on the bed in this house, man, like, you'll never see me again. I'm gone.
That makes 2 of us.
All right, this video is getting long, so I thought we'd take an intermezzo with a short hat-related scene that I just had to include. In Gus Van Sant's Drugstore Cowboy, Matt Dillon's character, a superstitious junkie, flips out when a member of his gang puts a hat on the bed.
Goddamn hat off the bed.
He's dead serious. This superstition actually comes from old cowboy culture. Hats were associated with spirits, omens, and even death. Van Sant used the moment to show how addiction warps your sense of reality. Also, the scene's kind of hilarious as Damon's delusion extends to the back of mirrors.
Never look at the backside of a mirror, because when you do, it'll affect your future. Because you're looking at yourself backwards.
Okay, back to Hollywood headwear. No conversation about Hollywood hats would be complete without mentioning Jake and Elwood Blues.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
Black suits, black shades, and those perfect black fedoras. The Blues Brothers hats aren't just a costume. They're the uniform for 2 men on a mission from God.
We're on a mission from God.
The hats, paired with their classic Ray-Bans and black suits, were inspired by real Chicago blues musicians, specifically those who'd perform in nightclubs wearing full formal wear. Okay, we're on a roll now. Speaking of black hats, Audrey Hepburn's oversized black hat from Breakfast at Tiffany's is a defining piece of the film's iconic fashion. The hat, a chapeau du matin with trailing sash, was designed by close friend Hubert de Givenchy, who designed many of her iconic outfits. Givenchy and Hepburn's collaboration had a profound impact on late 50s and early 60s fashion, solidifying Hepburn's status as a style icon and putting Givenchy's brand on the map.
You're a darling to help. I could never have done it without you.
Our next hat takes us to the silent era. Don't get ahead of yourself. Silent film actor Buster Keaton is credited with bringing the pork pie hat back into prominence. Keaton would make, or more specifically, affect existing hats to be exactly the style he made famous. He began fashioning the hats out of Stetsons. He would stiffen the brim with sugar water. Over the course of his career, Keaton estimates he crafted thousands of hats. He once stated that he would go through dozens of hats on each film, as his stunts often involved water, which would ruin the hats. Some would even get stolen off his head by fans who wanted a souvenir. It got to the point where Keaton was going through so many hats that he taught his wife how to make them to his specifications. No one else wore a pork pie hat quite the same way, that is, until 1971 with the release of The French Connection. Gene Hackman wore the shit out of this pork pie hat, bringing the style back once again. But before we leave the silent era, we have to talk about the most famous hat and mustache combo of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Charlie Chaplin and his famous tramp character. Chaplin, while working on the film Mabel's Strange Predicament in 1914, was asked to dress in a comedic way. He chose baggy pants, a tight coat, a bowler hat, and oversized shoes, creating a character that was the antithesis of the typical gentleman. The cane came later. The tramp costume itself is a startling mix of class symbols. The bowler hat and cane represent the upper class, while the tight suit and baggy pants are a symbol of the have-nots. It personified a nation dealing with the Great Depression. The battered but not out attitude made Chaplin's tramp character endearing for everyone. Charlie Chaplin donated an original tramp costume to the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, and it's still on display to this day. But Chaplin's clashing of classes was also the inspiration for another iconic film costuming, complete with bowler hat and cane, to solidify the connection. And I'll give you a second to guess. Yes, I'm talking about the Droogs in A Clockwork Orange. Stanley Kubrick decided on the same bowler cap and cane to represent the upper class, but rather than put Malcolm McDowell and his pals in an ill-fitting suit, he put them in white jumpers with codpieces and combat boots to represent the working man. Wait, codpieces? It's not hard to make the jump from Charlie Chaplin to A Clockwork Orange. Well, in this sense anyway. Side note, the essay that got me into film school, I compared A Clockwork Orange to The Wizard of Oz, so anything's possible. Last, but certainly not least, on the list of iconic headwear, how can we not mention the one, the only, Carmen Miranda and her fruit-filled turban, or as some have called it, her tutti frutti hat. It became a key part of her signature look and a symbol of her over-the-top persona. Inspired by Bahia-style turbans worn in her home country of Brazil, she incorporated elements of Brazilian carnival and samba traditions into her performances. Her fruit-filled headgear, along with her platform shoes, were mimicked by Daffy Duck, bringing her iconic style to a new generation of moviegoers. So yeah, hats. They're not just wardrobe, they're identity, their mythology, their character development with a brim, or in some cases, a fruit basket. Either way, these hats have earned their place in film history. And I know I left a few out. In fact, I'm already planning on a part 2 on this admittedly strange subject. So please, help me out and drop a comment below on a famous hat you'd like to see profiled in the next video. As always, film is about community. I'm Mike, and I love movies.